Hello everyone and welcome to Slapendipity, Hobos of Happy Slappy Town. My name is Devon, but you can call me Gibby, and I am here with...
Eric, who you can call Eric.
And when I say here with, I mean here with, like, actually, we're in the same place.
Devon, we're still under under the bridge.
We got a
next
microphone.
To the dumpster of the raccoons.
We brought a microphone under the bridge.
Devon, we've been recording under the bridge.
No, we had tin cans, and the Chaos God Discord was allowing us to talk over the cans so we could speak to each other and record the show. Now we're in person.
So you're telling me I made sure to go under a bridge every time for an hour at least, and you've just been not under bridges when we record?
No, we're under the same bridge. It's just that the magic that records our conversation only works if we're talking through the tin cans. Our friend Mike Spike brought his magical microphone, and that's where we're using. He's Mike. He invented the microphone. And now we have that here. Eric, we have a lot to talk about. Let's cover
all right. We don't
What?
need these raccoons in our talks. Let's get to the meat and potatoes.
I guarantee there will be no raccoons in any of these stories. Okay, let's...
I actually passed a raccoon driving on the way here.
You've already made me a liar. You've already made me a liar. Last week, we ended the conversation saying something to the effect of, like, this is the last time you guys will hear from us before our speed dating thing.
Yeah,
And then we knew that was last Monday that we recorded that. So for us, it was like, that's a whole week from now. That's forever in the future. Wouldn't it be crazy that next time we sit down, it'll be after speed dating? Let's not talk about speed dating for now.
Okay.
You want me to tell you what I did for my week up until then?
Sure.
Before then?
Yeah.
Okay, so as you know, cross off your bingo cards. I work in a movie theater. Alright, see, now I can actually see your bingo card. Oh my god, you got B down 1. B1. So I work in a movie theater. One of our friends has also been working at the movie theater for 5 years. Like, along with me. Like, you and her started the same day.
Right.
We all started the same day over 5 years ago. I'm leaving in a week, ish. And so she left this week. So, like, she left 2 weeks before me. So I put this project together where I reached out to a couple of our friends who used to work there. And I went and I found everyone who works there who's been there for the whole 5 years. Because there's like 9 employees who's been working at that movie theater for 5 years. Like, since day one till today are still there. So I go and I talk to them. And I'm like, I want you guys to look into the camera and say something you love about this place. And it doesn't need to be, like, about the company. You don't need to say something nice about the company. It's just, like, what do you like about working here? And someone's like, I love all of my wonderful coworkers. And someone's like, I love working with my coworkers. And someone's like, the people here are really cool. I like hanging out with them. Right? So it's just, like, nice things. So I do that, and I go and I get all the people who currently work there who've been there for a long time. And then I go and I find some of our friends who left, a while ago, like you. I go to you, and what did you say?
I liked the coworkers and making food for them.
You said you like making food for all the coworkers. And so I get, like, maybe 10 to 12 people. And so they're all saying, like, I love this. And then my sneaky little plan was I was going to bring our friend who's leaving and also our general manager into a theater to show them this cute little goodbye video. So one of the people I'm talking to, one of our friends who used to work there, is like, Gibby, you gotta go, like, way above, like, you're thinking little leagues, minor leagues, we gotta go way overboard. Let's go find every single person who has ever worked there before, either stalk them on social media, or if we're friends with them and we have their phone numbers, use that, and contact every single human being we can possibly think of who used to work there. So very quickly, the 9 people who currently work there, plus our 3 friends who used to work there, who I'm still in contact with, who were going to be in this video, balloons out to, like, 50 people. Like, people who I haven't spoken to in 5 years. People who, like, I don't necessarily like, but currently work there. So now it's everyone. I'm getting everyone together. And I go in on our friend's last day, and it's just her and then Big Manager Man. And she's, like, doing her opening work, like, she's having a little meeting with all the staff in the front room. Like, okay, guys, it's gonna be busy today. And I waltz on in, out of uniform, just dressed in, like, a little sweatshirt and jeans. And they're like, Devon, what are you doing here? You're not working today. I'm like, heck yeah, I know I'm not working today. You think I was gonna not be here to see her on her last day? I was like, oh my gosh. And so I have one of our friends call her on her Instagram FaceTime thing, and I go upstairs and I kajigger with one of the projectors so that it can show this video that I'm going to be showing. And I go and I find her and I find our general manager and I'm like, you guys, just come into theater number 2 for a second. I got something to show you. So we go into theater number 2 and I hit play on the video. And it goes through all this wonderful things of people saying nice things about the job and the building, and the manager starts crying, and then one of our bartenders, who's like one of our other friends, comes in, and she's watching it, and she's crying, and someone who, like, we haven't seen in 5 years will come on screen, and they'll be like, oh my god, I cannot believe you got Sam, and everyone's like, yeah, Sam, we love Sam, and we watch the whole thing, and then the bartender girl is like, how'd you not get this person? I'm like, I don't know that person, I don't know how to reach out to them. And then our friend who's leaving is like, I can't believe you didn't get this person. I'm like, I don't know that person. So even though the surprise of the video has ended, we've shown it to her, she's left, she's gone, they still kind of want to, like, do more. They still want to compile this video together. And so in the last, like, 3 days, we've gotten an additional, like, almost 30 people. So, like, we have probably over 50 people at this point in the video, which is, like, crazy to me. And it's just been very nice, I think, having contact with people who I haven't spoken to in a long time. Because all these people are like, oh my god, I forgot that I was friends with this guy, and now they're, like, texting. Doing the project required me to get back in contact with my ex-girlfriend, which is, like, not a bad thing. It's a thing, but it was not, like, it's just a thing. It's just a thing, Eric. It's a thing. We sent, like, 3 messages back and forth. Isn't that nice? You're holding in a laugh.
It could be.
It's a thing. It's just like, wow. How, like, that's so nice that we're able to just send a message back and forth. One of the guys who hasn't worked there in about 5 years is like, this really made me, like, he worked there for the first summer we opened. So 5 years ago, this kid, when he was 17, worked at the movie theater for 2 months. He's like, I really want to get the old crew back together. And he lists, like, 12 people. So, like, him, me, you, our friend who's leaving, and then, like, 8 other people who worked there 5 years ago. And he's like, I want us all to get together and meet up and just hang out sometime in the next couple weeks. I'm like, that's amazing. Like, heck yeah. And so, if nothing else, you know, this silly little video that, oh my god, isn't that so cute? It got some of our friends in contact with other friends they haven't spoken to in a while, and it might lead up to this gathering of, you know, these number of us who haven't seen each other in all these years, just hang out and be like, all of our lives converged at one point all those years ago, and then immediately diverged. But now we're all back together again, talking about the good old days. Isn't that wonky? So I think there's just been a lot of good outcomes, good vibes, good feels, some serendipity in there. One of the craziest ones, I think, is there was this guy who worked there, again, 5 years ago, I haven't seen him in forever. And we're like, he was such a big part of our little friend group, of our little experience there. You know, he was friends with me and you, and then he was friendly with some other people, and then he, like, left. And then none of us talked to him anymore. And it's like, oh, it would be so cool to get him, but it would be really awkward to reach out to him. An hour after I show our friend who's leaving the video, and then I go home, that guy who we wanted to get but thought it would be too awkward to reach out to, walks into the theater to watch a movie. And we're like, oh my god. And so we get him on video being able to say, like, I love this. And I just thought that was a magical moment. Serendipity, slapendipity, he's a hobo. But no, I just thought that project was just such a beautiful, magical capstone of all of our time there. Of this wonderful, terrible place that we call home, but it's also our job, and so that's kind of unhealthy. We need a third place, but there is no third place because our job is a movie theater, and so it cannot also be our third place, and we live in a small town, and there's no place to be our third place.
It's under the bridge.
Well, that's our home, so that can't be a third place.
No.
Yeah, I know, right? It sucks. In case you didn't listen to episode 3 or whatever, a third place is somewhere that's not your home and not your job, and is somewhere that you and your friends or your community can spend time in. That's
Without
not home or job.
Pressure of needing to buy things, and you can just relax and vibe.
So, like, a park, but then we talked about how parks will close at sundown, and so it's silly, or, like, you can't have, like, an ice cream day without a permit, right? It's like, that doesn't count. We need let's bring back community centers, okay? Eric, let's start a community center.
Okay.
All the little hobos.
Okay.
For the teenage hobo in all of us.
Okay.
What did you do this week leading up to the dating?
I lived at your place, mostly. We've been watching some, horror movies in honor of spooky season. So we've been watching mostly, like, the 80s horror slasher types. Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween. But we also threw in, like, the Night of the Living Dead, which is, like, the first zombie movie, or, like, Smile, which was a much more recent horror movie. Yeah. It's been a lot of that.
Yeah, so Night of the Living Dead, despite being from 1968 and having, like, film errors on it, like, there's all those scratchy lines and, like, dots and stuff from, like, old film reels being damaged, right? So, besides that, it was so much like a modern movie. Like, you could just make that today, and it would be the same thing. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Great
Good
old
movie.
You know? All right.
So,
I think it's time.
It is time.
I think we have to talk about it.
You went to your first speed dating event.
You went to your second speed dating event.
Wow. For me, it was whatever. Not whatever, but, like, I've already been to my first one.
Oh, lordy.
The weather was nicer, so there was more people.
Mm-hmm.
And but for me, otherwise, I was just like, yeah, I know what's up. I know how to do this.
I didn't.
And how did that make you feel?
A lot of things I had anxiety about were not things that ended up coming into play whatsoever, and there was a whole host of new obstacles I hadn't even dreamt of, which was a problem. So, like, we get there, and as you kind of explained last time, if you guys didn't listen to that episode, it's outside. Imagine just a bunch of, like, picnicky tables set up in a big circle in the back of this cafe. So we get there, and there's a big line for the cafe. Like, a lot of people are going in and out of there, getting food and getting coffee. We get there about the same time as a character who I'm going to continue to call Green Sweater Girl. So we get there the same time as Green Sweater Girl, and we kind of walk in after her, and we go to the back, and we go to this picnic table where this lady's sitting, and she's like, okay, give me your name, and I'll give you your card. And the card has our name on it, and it has our number, and on the inside you kind of fold it open, and you can write the name and the number of the girl you're talking to, and then a little description of them, or like something like notes to remember them by.
Such as Green Sweater Girl.
Yeah, so like when I talked to Green Sweater Girl, I wrote Green Sweater Girl, and then, you know, the stuff that we talked about. And then there's a little Y and a little N, and so after the date, you can circle Y or N, and if two people circle the same person, so like if I circle girl number 5, and girl number 5 circles me, and I'm number 15, then they'll exchange our email addresses the next day. So I'm looking at this, we're like, okay, we gotta go get tea. So me and Eric go inside, and he gets tea. I don't drink tea, so I'm like, I'll have what he's having. And I got a honey tea, and it tasted like liquid honey, and I'm like, that is pretty yummy. And then we, like, went and we sat down, and our tables were right next to each other, because we paid at the same time, which I was very grateful for, because I would have been scared otherwise. But we rotated clockwise, which meant that every girl besides the first, Eric would speak to them. He would finish speaking to them, and then I am immediately now the next person they're talking to.
Because the women move, not the men.
Yes, the women move. So Eric sees a girl, they get up, they move over, now I see the same girl. This was very beneficial to me, because it allowed me to segue the conversation continually by saying things like, oh, and I'm here with my best friend Eric. He's been to one of these before. And then I gesture over at Eric, who they know, because they just spoke to him. So it kind of, you know, a lot of thee people are like, oh, tee-hee, this is my first time. And I'll be like, oh my god, me too. But I'm here with my friend Eric, who was here last time. And they're like, oh my god, Eric, I know him. He's from Happy Slappy Town. Are you from Happy Slappy Town? And I'm like, oh my god, yes! So it was just, I felt it was much easier to speak to these people with them having just spoken to Eric. Eric, you did not receive this benefit whatsoever.
I did not.
So you probably didn't even notice. And I could have been not there or on the other side of the circle, and it would have been the same to you.
More or less. I think there was one time where I was like, oh yeah, that guy. I dragged him here. Because he was supposed to go last time, but bailed.
I didn't bail. I was busy. I had work.
You didn't have work. Aha!
Last
You
time?
said you were going to the doctor.
Oh, no, I did. I had a doctor's appointment. And then I wake up, and the doctor calls and says, actually, the doctor's sick and can't come in, so you're going to have your appointment over the phone. And I said, okay, did that, and then rolled over and went to sleep. I think that's what happened.
And you could have went.
Well, at that point, we would have had to buy tickets and XYZ, yeah. Anyway, so I sitting there, I would say it took me about 5 people rotating before I got down, like, what we should do, right? Like, sit down, be like, hi, what is your name? What is your number? I'm going to write down that you're number 12, and your name is
Mimi. Mimi.
I'm trying to think of Mimi. Okay, I'm trying to think of a name that wasn't one of the people that we were there with. So your name is number 12, and your name is Mimi. Just for the first 5 times, someone sits down, and, like, maybe you shake hands, maybe you don't. I always let the women prompt that, because I think that, like, if a woman wants to shake your hand, that's normal. But some women don't shake hands, because that's more of a, stereotypical gendered male thing. So, like, I'm not going to prompt a handshake, but if a woman does, then obviously you do it. So the first couple people, they walk over, they sit down, you say hi, you make eye contact, you introduce yourselves, you start talking. Because it's weird for someone to walk over, take a seat at the table, and both of you to stare down at a piece of paper and write in silence before you do anything. So it took, like, 5 rotations before, like, I figured out that actually you do have to start that way.
Yeah.
Because for the first couple, at the end, they ring a bell and they're supposed to get up and leave, and I have to be like, oh my god, wait, hold on. How do you spell your name? What's your number?
Mm-hmm.
So, I also, like, as someone who does a lot of interviews for my job, I know that it's very off-putting to take notes while you're actively speaking to someone.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if I'm doing a job interview and, like, you're a serious candidate, I'm going to have a conversation with you, and then when the conversation's over, write down some of the notes, unless they're super important. So, like, by doing these interviews over the course of however many years I've been a manager at the theater, I have a couple, like, yes or no questions, like, are you at least 18 years old? Can you drive, like, do you have reliable transportation to get to work? Are you available to work on holidays? And once you just check off those legal things you have to ask, you have a conversation with the person. And then they leave, and then you take your notes. So for this, I took all of my notes after the fact. I was not sitting there sketching, writing stuff down. You kind of said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the first time you went, that people were kind of taking notes as they went. And so I want to know if you experienced that this time, or if most people wrote their notes afterwards with you this time.
I don't remember what I said last time, so shrug. You can just listen to previous episodes. This time, in the similar vein, I'm glad it took you only 5 people to figure it out. Yes, you, like, name, number. Maybe if you write fast, you can get, like, 1 note just based off of appearance and then you're like, hi, I'm Eric. Oh, nice to meet you, and blah, blah, blah. And then you have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see anyone take notes during it. I think one girl was on her phone, which I was like...
No way!
Damn. But no. Yeah, and I did the same thing of, like, I will have a conversation and then take my notes when we're done. And Devon can attest, I did not... There were so many people, and they rotated so fast sometimes, I just didn't get to take notes. And then I just had to be like, that person 3 turns ago, I think we talked about this.
Yeah. Yeah, they have you take a picture of your note card. So you hand in the note card at the end of the session, so they know who you match with. But they have you take a picture of it so you can remind yourself as you go. So as me and Eric are driving home after the event, I'm reading through what he wrote down, and I'm reading through what I wrote down so that we can compare and be like, oh, what did you think of Jennifer? Oh, you wrote down, I wrote down that she's a nurse, that she really loves dogs, and that her, she made really good eye contact. And Eric wrote down that she's from around here, and that she has an older brother named Paul. It's like, okay, between both of our notes, we now know more about Jennifer, right? But then for some of yours, you just wrote down, like, nice. And then for some of mine, I just wrote down green sweatshirt girl.
This is true.
But it was, I didn't think that one of my problems would be like, how do I begin a conversation? Do I wait until after I write down their number, or do I write down the number first? Like, that was not something I saw going in as being a problem. So it was super, super windy. Super-de-duper-de windy.
Yeah.
And they had these plastic cheap tablecloths on the table.
Yep.
And they kept blowing away.
Yep.
Now, thankfully, everybody had a coffee cup or a teacup. So I had my teacup positioned on one corner of the table so that it wouldn't blow away. And then as the girls would come and sit down, they would like instinctively like put their coffee cup on the other side so it would kind of hold that down. When the event began, I had been on my phone very, very, very intently hiding the fact that I was playing Pokemon Go because I didn't want women to see that. So the moment the thing starts, I take my phone and I place it on the table so that it's pinning down the third corner of the tablecloth. So my coffee cup, my phone, her coffee cup, and then if she wants to put something down in the fourth corner, whatever. But after about 3 rotations, I get very self-conscious of the fact that my cell phone is out. Because I'm like, if a girl walks over and sits down and all she sees is my smiling face, my coffee cup that everyone has, and my phone, that might give off like a bad impression, right? Like that could be like a thing. Like you just said this girl was on her phone. I think that's wild. I would never, ever, ever think in the 5 minutes that we're here to talk that you're going to be on your phone. But I can also see people having a problem with my phone being out in the first place. So after I notice this, I take it and I put it on my lap. I'm wearing jeans, and so I can't get in my pocket without standing up. And so the entire time I have my phone balanced in my lap, my knees are pressed together, and it's balanced like across my lap under the table horizontally. And I'm like, I can't do anything with it. This is very uncomfortable now. Eric is shaking his head.
I am shaking my head.
I also, so because I don't know anything about tea, and I just ordered the same thing you did, and our tea was free, like we got a little voucher. So you went up and you ordered yours.
Yeah.
And then I just said, I'm going to have the same thing as him, and we paid with the vouchers. So they wrote Eric on both of our cups.
Yeah.
So it also took me a while until one of the girls pointed it out to be like, oh, you and Eric are friends. I was wondering, because your cup says Eric on it. Yeah. I'm like, oh, that is weird. And so then I purposefully turned the cup so that they couldn't read the name on it because I didn't want them getting confused.
Why are there 2 Erics? Who are you?
Are there any other Erics I should know about? Meow.
Funny.
I'm gonna take this time to cut into the story and let you guys know that Eric is judging me hard right now. So he edits the show. And obviously we don't do this on video. We can never see each other. This is the first time we're ever recording in person. And I know, as he is sitting here watching me fidget with a Swiss Army knife that's in my hand, he's like, is that all the little clickety-clacks I always hear on Devon's End? When he's talking or I'm talking, and there's just little, like, sounds of him opening the little scissors as he's just nervously talking and rocking back and forth. Is that what those sounds are? He's fidgeting? He can't talk without just fidgeting with a little knife? And the answer is yes. This is what I always fidget with. So if you ever hear, like, that sound, or sometimes I accidentally hit the table with the knife, that's what that sound is.
I'm not judging you because of that. I'm judging you just because of, at the end of the conversation, you could have just stood up, put your phone in your pocket, and sat back down.
No, I don't know. I think mildly threatening aura. It's like, okay, it's time for the girls to leave. Me and the girl both stand up. I reach into my pocket. What if I have a tiny Swiss Army knife in there?
No. Yeah, but if you didn't enjoy the conversation, it doesn't matter. What do you care what she thinks?
I'd say the only conversation I didn't enjoy was toward the very end. There was, who I'm going to assume was probably the youngest girl there. I would guess maybe like 22. Who was just like just giving me nothing. Like no topic of conversation. She was obviously, I would say that all of us toward the end were like tired.
Yeah.
But she obviously just was, and this is at her age and at her standards, whatever, totally okay thing to do. You sit down across from someone who you have no attraction to, you have no intention of dating. It takes effort to like talk and to be nice and to be courteous and whatever. And so she just didn't care. Like, why am I going to expend energy telling this guy about myself when I'm definitely, this older bald man in front of me when I know I'm not going to date him. Mm-hmm. But I'm just like, okay.
That's when you're like, you at least be polite about it, and you're like, the weather's bright, huh?
Yeah.
How's that sun? Are you hot?
Yeah, toward the end, the sun was in my eyes. In the beginning, we were in the shade. It was nice. Toward the end, it was in my eyes. In the beginning, it was cold. I was wearing a sweater. Toward the end, it was hot. I was sweating under my sweater, but then I was all sweaty, so I couldn't take it off. It was a thing. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was, like, notable. I'm like, I sure am glad that they can't see how sweaty I am under my sweater.
Walls.
The other thing I thought was interesting was I would sort of develop these segues, these like ways of going from one part of the conversation to the next. So one of the key points I wanted to hit on, because I think it makes me sound better, you know, instead of saying I work at a movie theater as an almost 30-year-old man, right? Like to some women, you know, professional working women who want a nice steady man to settle down with. If I'm like, yeah, I work at a movie theater, that's just not an impressive job, I would say. So I would always say I went to college to become a high school English teacher, and I got my degree. And, you know, I decided that I didn't necessarily want to do that. You know, I loved being in the classroom with the kids, but, you know, every teacher I've ever spoken to says that, like, the school board and the curriculum and, like, having to do things their way kind of sucks. And I was looking for jobs around COVID times, and so all the schools weren't really hiring for, like, normal school stuff. So I ended up working at the movie theater. And as a manager there, I get to train and teach the 16 and 17-year-olds that I would be teaching in school, but on how to do movie theater things. So I get to make them productive members of society and, you know, good, outstanding citizens at their job instead of at school. And so I find a lot of fulfillment in teaching them there and being their trainer there. And I keep in touch with my my high school creative writing teacher. And so we'll talk. And, you know, she's their teacher in school, and then I'm their boss at work. And so we'll have the same people. And she'll be like, oh my god, Timmy did so well in his essay today. And I'll be like, oh my god, Timmy did so well making popcorn today. And so it kind of feels like me and her are colleagues because we're both, you know, watching the same kids. And so that exact thing I just said is what I said to all of the women starting after number 4. Because I just sort of, during my conversation with number 4, it came up naturally. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of like that train of thought, that A to B to C to D, you know, bringing in little Timmy as like my example, who's based on a real person. His name isn't Timmy, but like that, you know, is the point. That conversation naturally happened. So then when I'm talking to person number 5 and the topic of my job comes up, I just retell that story. I don't need to go and find the train of thought. I just retell it. And then number 6, I retell it, but I change one detail. So I stop using his real name, but now I'm using the little Timmy. By number 5, I have now taken out the detail that the thing that, you know, little Timmy is good at is making popcorn, and I change it to something a little more, like, meaningful. I'm like, oh, little Timmy did good on his essay? Yeah, little Timmy did really good dealing with a rough situation at work, and I think he came out being a much better employee, right? Like, you start iterating on this thing. But it became, if I view a conversation the way that you view editing chunks of footage and audio in a video editor, which is how I view life now, because I spend so much time staring at it.
Oof.
It's like I'm copy and pasting this one chunk of audio into each conversation I had. And so that kind of became like my go-to, this is how I'm explaining what I do for work. It is fulfilling, I love it, I fell into it, it's COVID's fault, but it is also what I like doing.
Wow.
And then a couple, like I think 3 people asked the same question, which was like, oh, would you ever see yourself teaching again? And my honest answer is like, I could totally see myself becoming a college professor at some point and teaching like film analysis or like creative writing or something or public speaking, but that I wouldn't want to ever like be a high school teacher just because I enjoy the freedom that I have doing what I'm currently doing. So yeah, I kept finding little, I'm going to call them audio segments that you copy and paste. And every time I find a good one, I would copy and paste it into the next conversation. So copy and pasting, you know, if they're like, it's my first time here, I go, oh my gosh, it's my first time too. I'm here with my friend Eric. He's actually the person sitting across the table from you right over there that you just talked to. The last time he was here, it was raining. And he said it was a really good experience, even though it wasn't raining. And now we're here and it's not raining. It's like, oh my God, it's going to be even better because it's bright and sunny. So then you just copy and paste that in every conversation. And so as I went on, I would find that, you know, of the 2.5 minutes I get to speak, 2 minutes of them were copy pasted from this trial and error of figuring out what to say. So toward the end, I was just saying the same thing over and over, but it was like this workshopped speech. It was like, this is the best way to say everything. And I thought it was very interesting because I'm like, this is very much the same as like workshopping a piece of poetry. Or this is very much the same as workshopping, like I give a little like tour of the building at work when I'm introducing new people to like working there. And I have the same joke that I tell at the exact same time and the same tone of voice that I use when I'm explaining things. And I always have them, you know, I've learned to explain things the exact same way, right? Like we have these doors that you have to open and they're touch screens. but they don't activate if you touch them. You have to place your whole palm against it. Remember on old cell phones how you would use a screenshot by placing your palm over the entire screen at once?
No.
Okay, well, that was a thing. And so I'm like, oh my god, so this is touchscreen, but you can't just tap it. And I tap it really, really hard. You have to place your palm on it, and then you press it and it goes badoop, and then I say badoop the moment it says badoop. It's a whole thing. Anyway, I found it very interesting. Dating people is like workshopping a poem. That's my metaphor.
That's funny you say that. My metaphor is dating is like job interviews and job applications. Same process. How do you make yourself sound good? And how do you make it sound without coming off as cocky, but still highlighting your skills or abilities, but also being not too rigid so that people see, wow, he's like fun and quirky and maybe good at whatever we want him to be. And then you gotta allow like a wiggle room so they can ask you questions and stuff.
So, would you say that you did fall into a groove of talking about the same kind of thing, or were you very go with the flow? Did you let them steer the conversation, or did you do it?
Well, I think it was reminiscent of my last time saying of it, of like, the women more or less knew what they wanted to ask, and would ask those things. There were some where I had to like lead the conversation, or I asked more questions or whatever. Like, I think it was the same woman that was just like tired with you and didn't say much. Mm-hmm. To me, she was like, man, relationships are hard and like rough, and I've been single for 5 years or whatever, and blah blah blah. And I was like, oof, yeah. Like, I've been single for this long, and this is how I've been, and this is what the relationship was like. So we like bonded over that, but it was just like kind of nothing talk, but like, oh, you are not interested in like the job, the where do you live, and blah blah blah. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I don't know. I've only been to 2, so, but like, I think people that don't ask the standard suite of questions of like, where do you work, where do you live, what do you do for fun, are less likely to, I don't know, be as engaged with you. Yeah. There are some conversations I had though where we just like talked about like businesses, and I was like, wow, this is a fun conversation.
Obviously, the ones I liked, because like you sit down across from a stranger, right? Mm. You want to get as much of their story as possible, so you can form a good like map in your head of who they are. And so I hope that the things I was saying was forming a good and accurate map of who I was to them. And like my favorite was one of them started talking about the business that she ran, that she started. And I'm obviously not going to go into like details about like these people's personal lives, but like she did something, and then she started a business where now she's like doing that same thing but helping other people do it. And so she's going through talking about her clients and talking about her this and her that. And I'm like, this is a really cool snapshot of your life. She wove in there that like, oh, her parents live the next town over and she talks to them all the time, right? Like, just a very good snapshot into her life. And I find that like, that was probably the best conversation I had with someone in terms of learning who they were and them. That's the best performance someone else had in terms of letting me know who they were and what they thought and, what their life was like. This one person, literally the bell was ringing and we hadn't gotten to me asking what they do yet, like as a job. And so, I just don't remember any of the conversation. Like, I'm sure that she said cool things, but like, I didn't have that grounding. I couldn't, okay, where does she live? Who does she live with? What does she do? I didn't have this ground of who she was as a person before she just starts rattling on about nonsense. And so I literally don't remember that conversation other than I wasn't able to ask what she did.
Yeah. It's kind of whack. So like you have an idea, like the Christian salsa dancer that I talked to last time. I have no idea what we talked about, but as you can tell, Christian salsa dancer is wedged in there. Mm-hmm.
So there's 2 people who I'm absolutely not going to forget, because the conversation, I was just like, how did that happen? So, Eric, as you know, because we've talked about this before, couple episodes ago, many episodes ago, you talked about how you were on Netflix and you stumbled across a movie called Bullet Train.
Yeah.
And you really liked Bullet Train.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my god, that was one of my favorite movies that year. And then the guy who made Bullet Train, his new movie came out this summer. It was called Fall Guy.
Yes.
And we saw Fall Guy.
It was good.
And we both really, really liked it. So, I have movie theaters will display posters called bus shelters. Bus shelter posters are meant to fit into those little glass overhangs that you sit at when you're waiting at a bus, a bus shelter. And they have those giant advertisements on the side. And so that kind of poster, which is like 42 inches tall or something, are called bus shelters. And so all the big movie theater chains have giant poster cases in them for bus shelters for what? They must be like 6 feet tall, right?
The posters?
The posters, yeah, almost.
No, like 5 feet?
Like maybe, I don't know. Very, very tall. That's not a bus shelter. But very, very, very tall. So they're hard to display. And I'm like, now that I have so many, or I have access to so many from my job, I want to display one in my house. And so I got a nice little frame for one. But despite the fact that I have so many, I couldn't think of any to put up. And so I had one for Fall Guy. And I'm like, I'm going to put a Fall Guy bus shelter in my living room, which I have. Eric, can you attest to this?
I can attest.
So I have that in my living room. So I'm talking to someone, and when I say, like, I work at a movie theater, a lot of people will ask, like, oh, do you get to see a lot of movies? And I say, yes, I do. I see them before they come out, and I see basically everything that comes out. And then they ask me what my favorite kinds of movies are. And I always feel weird, because if someone loves horror, I never want to say I hate horror. Or if someone hates horror, I never want to say I love horror. I don't know why I picked to say that. That's a really difficult word to say. So I said my real answer, which is like, I see everything that comes out. If it's a good movie, I like it. I appreciate all genres. One person asked what the best movie I think this year to come out was. And going back and thinking over all the movies I saw this year, my honest answer is probably Fall Guy. And I think that's a safe answer because it's also a PG-13 action movie starring Ryan Gosling, who, like, there's a possibility that the person I'm speaking to knows. And so I go, Fall Guy. And she goes, oh my god, I love Fall Guy. I was just talking about it with some of my friends on our way over here. I'm like, oh my god, that's so cool. So I'm sitting across from someone who, like, also loved Fall Guy. I'm like, what a great little coinkydink that, like, I pulled that out of my head because I just put a bus shelter of it up in my house. Not because it's, like, actually the greatest movie of all time or anything, but, like, a series of circumstances and coincidences and serendipities allowed me to say that, and then she also liked that movie and had been talking about it that day. So I thought that was really cool. Did you have any serendipities, Eric?
No.
No?
No, not really.
Okay, well, I had an even bigger serendipity.
Tell me your even bigger serendipitous.
Do you remember we were sitting down at the tables, there was no one really there yet, they weren't around yet,
right?
And I made a comment to you. Do you remember what that comment was?
No.
About the music that was being played?
Oh, this is my favorite song, and it's by... Man.
So there was just, like, music playing from speakers outside the coffee stand.
Live music.
Coffee shop. So it turned into live music, but originally I think it may have just been radio. Like, when we walked in, I don't think Guitar Man was there yet. But so we're sitting there and we're just vibing, right? And I am such a ball of anxiety. And so one of my favorite songs comes on. And I'm like, Eric, that's one of my favorite songs. And the song is Operator by Jim Croce. And Jim Croce is popular but niche. Before X-Men First Class or whatever one that was came out, I don't think anyone, like, I would be surprised if anybody our age had ever heard of him. But then that movie made Time in a Bottle really popular because that's the song that Quicksilver runs around to. And so now I'm like, oh, people know him as the Time in a Bottle guy. But for me, he's the Operator guy, the Lover's Cross guy, the Don't Mess Around with Jim, the Bad Leroy Brown guy, you know. So, like, I love him. Almost 10 years ago, me, you, George, and Christian played the Newlywed Game. Like, just in my living room with a camera. Do you recall this?
I do.
Do you recall losing?
On a technicality.
The technicality was that we were tied, and the final question was, does your partner believe a hot dog is a sandwich? And I knew that George did, and I think you forgot if Christian did or not, and so I won.
Anyway, you guys also didn't keep to the rules and then kiss. The rules were the winners had to kiss because they won the newlywed game.
Oh my gosh.
And you didn't kiss, so.
Yeah, that was a great one. I think one of the questions was like, who is your man, like, who is your celebrity, your gay celebrity crush? And we all put Chris Hemsworth. But so one of the questions was, it's not who's your favorite musician, it's not who's your favorite singer, it's what singer could you not live without? And so George goes on his whiteboard. So I had already answered, right? That's how it works. They ask one person the questions before the game starts. So the host already had all my answers. And then they ask George what he thinks I said. And so then live, he has to then guess. So the question is, what musician could Devon not live without? And he's like, well, it's an obvious one. And he goes to write Taylor Swift. And I'm like, actually, George, it's not the obvious one, which is totally cheating. And he's like, okay, well, then there's only one other option. And so he writes The Grateful Dead. And we're like, nope, the correct answer was Jim Croce. And George is like, I get it. Like, you love him and he's great, but like, how was I supposed to guess that? I'm like, I don't know, dude. I'm just answering the questions truthfully. Anyway, that's just an adventure, an episode in our lives from 10 years ago. So here, me and Eric are at the dating game. And there's music playing, and it's this song I like. And I'm like, wow, it is really niche that this song would be playing right now. I really love this song. I'm so happy. It's a very sad song, though. We were just kind of chit-chatting. And, like, again, I cannot express that there was nobody else around us. Maybe 6 rounds into the dating, this girl who, like, I don't know, like, I've always have green sweater girl in my mind, because she was there when we showed up. But black leather jacket girl, I would never say I noticed when she arrived. I just know that she's the person I spoke to 9th, you know? So girl comes up, and she's like, oh my god, I'm having so much fun. And I'm like, me too, this is my first time. She's like, it's my first time too, like, this is so quirky. And then she mentions, like, I love the music that they're playing. And she goes, Jim Croce is my favorite. I'm like, yeah, they were playing Operator before. She's like, Operator's one of my favorite songs. I'm like, oh my god, Jim Croce. And so we talk about that for a little while. And then, you know, she leaves and whatever. And the whole time I'm sitting there and I'm like, there is no way that she just happened to say that. She must have overheard our conversation. There's a 0% chance that she just happened to say, I like Operator by Jim Croce, when she was not present while the music was playing and she didn't overhear me and you talking about it.
Yeah. This
my conspiracy.
My conspiracy is that your conspiracy is not a conspiracy.
It's just obvious.
This entire time you've been going, wow, look at all these little serendipities and little magics, and then the little magic happens and you're like, that's a lie. It can't be.
It can't be.
But it can be.
This is the 9th person I spoke to. Likes reading, and I wrote, likes reading, Jim Croce. But yeah, I don't know. I'm like, if this is magic, then it was meant to be. I circled though for her for other reasons. I don't remember what they are, but at the time, obviously, I did. But yeah, I just felt like them, like, there is no way that's a coincidence. Because, like, I'm thinking in my head, you know, like, if I'm walking to my table and I hear someone talking and they're like, you know what my favorite thing to do is? Watch Five Nights at Freddy's Theories on YouTube. The moment they sat down, I wouldn't just politely segue into it. I would be, hey, I heard you talking about FNAF earlier. Let's talk about that. Right? I wouldn't pretend I just so happened to be bringing it up. I'd be like, let's cut to the chase. I heard you say this. Me too.
I mean, maybe. I think that's just a personalities thing. I think some people would, some people wouldn't.
The only person... So I talked last time, I said my ace in the hole is always going to be Taylor Swift.
Did it ever come up?
Came up once. Because a girl said that her favorite... Like, the only thing she talked about, like, the entire time was concerts and how she goes to concerts. And she talked about, like, I went to this concert. And it was someone who, like, I think it was Barry Manilow. Who I'm like, I've heard of that person. I don't know who he is. Whatever. And I'm like, yeah. So then I told her the story of me going to the Wallows concert a couple of months ago. And I mentioned how, like... You know, what kind of music do you listen to? Oh, I listen to, like, I would call it folk indie music, but, like, Ed Sheeran, Taylor Swift, Noah Kahan, but then also, like, country music. Like, I love my Tim McGraw and my Kenny Chesney. So, like, what's that called? I don't know. I call it farm emo. It's emo music, but it's about but it's with a banjo. Like, that's what I listen. I do not. If I say I listen to country music, people are gonna think that I'm out there rocking to Barefoot Blue Jean Night. I'm like, no, I'm listening to emo music, but it's sung by a fat man with a big beard and a trucker hat, but he has the voice of an angel singing about, farm things. But like I mentioned Taylor Swift, and then there was no like, oh my god, I love Taylor Swift. So it came up once. I didn't bring it up again, not like on purpose. It just didn't happen. But I think the biggest thing I learned, my big takeaway, was that of the 19 women we spoke to, yes, I only circled yes for one of them anyway, and so it didn't matter. My anxiety was always like, what if I'm talking to the greatest woman ever, my future wife, and I say something stupid and mess it up? And at the end, the reason that wasn't important is because I did not think I was very compatible with anyone who was there. And so there was nothing to be anxious about because there were no stakes. You had a different opinion, given that I know you circled more than one person.
I did circle more than one person.
What is your thought process on circling?
My thought process on circling is that you're on your 0th date if you're at a speed dating event. You only get to talk to each other for 5 minutes, and you don't get to learn that much about either. Like, she doesn't get to learn a lot about you. You don't get to learn a lot about her. So you should just circle yes on people that you had a fun conversation with and that you would want to talk to again. Because then that's what going on dates is for, is to finding out if you are compatible or how much more compatible you would be. So there's no harm in circling yeses on more than one person.
Well, for me, it's not. For me, it's like, for me to circle a yes on someone, it has to be someone who I'm genuinely interested in. Whereas, and not to put words in your mouth, but to you it seems more like you circled no on people who you felt like red flags or like no connection with, right? Like, you had to have a reason to circle no, whereas I had to have a reason to circle yes.
No, it was honestly mostly vibes.
Okay.
Like, did I want it? If I circled no on them, it was I did not enjoy the conversation, or I would not be interested on going on another date, or whatever. If I circled yes, it was I enjoyed the conversation, or I would be interested to learn more about them and therefore go on a date with them. If it was like a 50-50, then it was just coin flip.
Okay, well, you know where I'm going with this.
Go on.
The only person I circled yes on was one of the 5 people you circled no on.
Yes.
But you don't, like, remember what her vibe, like why did you circle no? What was the red flag? What was the bad vibe? And you don't remember.
Yeah, but I also don't remember basically any of them at this point.
Yeah.
Because one of the things, I forget if I already said during this episode, there were so many more that I struggled to take notes.
Yes.
And remember, and then it's like, oh no, that person from 3 conversations ago, I don't have any notes on. I guess I'll circle yes, because worst case scenario, I just don't match with her, and that's fine.
Yeah, I remember moments. I can't really, like, the Jim Croce person. If all 19 women we spoke to stood in a line, I don't think I'd be able to tell you which one of them was the one I had that conversation with. There's only 2 that I can particularly remember where I think that I'm embarrassed, right? It's like when you're up, like, you wake up at 3 a.m, you think of something embarrassing you did years ago. Right, like 10 years from now, I might think back to this moment.
Yeah.
And so the girl is a receptionist at a dentist office. And as you know, I was just at the dentist the day before. I was getting a cavity filled or something. I was at the dentist. I've been at the dentist like 3 times in the last month. Regular checkup, which then turned into like I had to have a cap replaced and then this cavity thing. So I've been at the dentist 3 times recently. And so she says that she's a receptionist at the dentist. And my brain is like, how can I relate to this? And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I was just there. I was just talking to a dentist person. I can be like, oh my God, like and she said like that she doesn't find any fulfillment in her job, but she likes the people there. And so I could kind of make this an overall point to be like, yeah, whenever I go to the dentist, I always see that like the people behind the desk always seem to have a really good friendship. And like, I could tell a story about how I was there and like they were ordering coffee and bagels. And they're like, oh my God, go ask Tina what she wants. And like, oh, Tina always ever wants eggs. We can just order egg bagel. And so I kind of wanted to make that point of, like, overall, it doesn't matter if you're not finding fulfillment there, if you like the people you're with, and it's just a stepping stone to things later in life. Right? Like, that's what I should have said. That's, in my mind, what I said was, it doesn't matter if you don't find fulfillment there, you enjoy the people you work with, and it's just a stepping stone to things later in life.
And what you actually said was...
What I actually said was, I go to the dentist sometimes, and I think the receptionists are usually enjoying themselves. So, she said, I work in a dentist office, and I said, I go to the dentist.
And she's just like, yeah, good job, buddy. You should. Twice a year.
3 times this month, actually. But yeah, I'm just like, what a sputtering, stupid thing to say. Like, quick, think of something to say. I have teeth.
32 even.
Hopefully. Actually, I do have my wisdom teeth. I don't know how many teeth that means I have.
36.
Okay, so I have bonus teeth.
You do.
Yes, that's cool.
I would like to point out, just so people don't think I'm so shallow and vapid, that, like, I do remember conversations. I remember the people's faces and stuff more so, though. So if you're like, oh, did you enjoy your conversation with Sam? I go, I don't know who Sam is. Was she in the green sweater or the black leather jacket? Was she... I know I had a conversation with a girl about, concerts, but whoa, I don't know her name.
Yeah, and, like, people always say I have a really good memory. And, like, that is true, but only if it's things that I think are worth remembering, if that makes sense. So, like, one of the ways I think is by telling myself stories. So, like, right after we were done, we went to go to get food at Wawa. And you asked me questions as I was eating, and I'm like, Eric, I need to decompress a little before, like, I can talk about it. Mm-hmm. And as I'm sitting there thinking about the day, and then talking to you in the car, and then telling my mom about it later that day, and thinking about it more, and then telling our friend Lucas about it, I'm like, I'm crystallizing these moments as these stories, which I'm now telling in podcast form. Mm-hmm. And when you think that way, or when you tell stories that way, they, again, the words crystallize, right? Like, they become more solid memories in your mind. Like, I guarantee years from now, if you come back and you listen to older episodes of the podcast, you'll be able to put yourself right in the shoes of where you were when that event was going on, because you'll have verbally told that story to another person, so you'll have to walk through it logically and be like, I was here, and then I was here, and then I did this. And so because you do that while telling the story on the podcast, it makes you remember it more so than any given random memory that you had that we didn't talk about on the podcast. And because in my own mind, I think the way that I speak when we're recording these episodes, it helps me retain those moments and those memories. But because I'm a very verbal thinker, I don't retain things like people's faces. I will always remember Green Sweater Girl. I'll always remember Blue Eye Girl, who said, it's really sunny and I wish that I was wearing sunglasses, but I decided not to because I think people would want to see my face more so that we could form a closer connection. Oh my god, your eyes are so cute. And then I didn't say, your eyes are so cute back because I felt uncomfortable. And I'm also going to be thinking about that at 3 a.m. 10 years from now. So, like, I remember her face, and I remember Green Sweater Girl, and I remember no one else.
Yeah. I remember some people's faces. And I don't know the conversation that we had.
Yep.
Like, there was one girl who kind of reminded me of a Jersey girl. She was very tan, black hair, in, like, a, I don't know, sweater dress-esque thing. And I have no idea what we talked about.
All right, let's get to what the people are here for. So I circled yes on one person.
Oh, yes.
And they said, hey, we'll email you tomorrow with your matches. Tomorrow being yesterday for us right now. Multiple days ago for you people listening. So there's bad news, worse news. There's good news, bad news, and worse news. The good news is that I was worried that we were going to have to wait. Like, I'd have to, like, walk around all day yesterday with, like, our plans, right? Like, I went and voted early yesterday, and then I had to go to the grocery store, and then me and you watched some horror movies. And I was worried that all day I'd be dreading the buzz on my phone of the email coming in with, like, the responses.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, that didn't happen. That email came in at 8 in the morning, and I was asleep.
Yep.
So the good news is, no anxiety, didn't have to wait. The bad news is what yours said.
Oh, mine was just like, you didn't match with anyone. People liked you, but you didn't match with them. Here's $10 off if you want to come next time.
For next time we go. And the worst news is that I did match with my person, and now I need to go on a date with them.
Hooray!
No.
Yeah!
So, like, I obviously now it's just a brand new kind of anxiety. So I haven't responded to her yet. I'm going to do that sometime today.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, I did respond yesterday. Yesterday was Sunday. I'm sorry. That is the Lord's Day. I'm not trying to pick up no hose on the Lord's Day, Eric. So I'm going to respond sometime today. And so I need to figure that out. I need to figure out when we're going to do this. Obviously, I have, like, it's my last week of work, so I need to work around that. I'm trying to figure out this party with these people we used to work with 5 years ago, so I need to work around that. And then I'm going to have to go on this first date, and I've never been on a first date. And it's going to be like, oh my god, we have so much in common. Like, we went speed dating once.
The weather's nice.
there was weather.
I listen to Taylor Swift. You listen to Taylor Swift.
Maybe. Because, like, again, I don't know. I don't know. I know the reason I decided to match with this person. I'm not going to go into too much detail until after. Like, if the date goes kind of like your bowling one, then I might tell stories from it. But, you know, I'm obviously not going to talk anything about this person's personal life. But they like writing, and I like writing, obviously. And so that was, like, the thing that we clicked with, at least in my mind. I don't know why. For all I know, she circled yes on everyone, and that the reason that you and her didn't match is because you circled no on her. Right? Like, that's very much a possibility. She has no idea that she's the only person I circled yes on. And I have no idea how many people she circled yes on. So, like, you know, I'm gonna talk to her, and then we're gonna go on that date and figure that out. And I'm just very, very, you know, anxious. I've never done this before, and I have no idea what to do, etc., etc., etc. One of my anxieties right now at this moment is that I've now gotten through the hard part. And the hard part was the speed dating. Assuming that we never, ever go again, I've gotten through and I've survived.
Uh-huh.
And as we kind of talked about 2 episodes ago, I was very happy that I technically still worked at the movie theater, because it allowed me to tell the story to everyone about how I work at a movie theater because it was a pivot, because I wasn't able to be a high school teacher, and I found it very fulfilling, and I love movies. Okay, let's talk about movies for a second. You know, I'm a manager. I've been there for 5 years, steady job, etc. A week and a half from now, I will not be able to say that I work in a movie theater. So when I go on this date with this person, and I have to talk about, like, my actual life, and I have to say, actually, I'm quitting the movie theater to be a YouTuber full-time, I'll have to explain to her what that is.
Yeah.
And not so much like a, teehee, I tricked you, I'm not really working in a movie theater. What's actually really cool about this person is that they also had a real job, and then they left that to follow their dreams and, like, do writing stuff. So, like, I do not think that she's going to be disappointed if I say I left my movie theater job to run a successful YouTube channel. Like, that's not the point. The point is that I'm going to have to explain what being a YouTuber is. I'm going to have to talk about this podcast. I mean, not, like, literally. I could just not talk about the podcast part. But I'm going to have to be like, I make videos on Chris Chan. I make videos on Five Nights at Freddy's.
I mean, you know.
I could like, fudge it and be like, I make videos on underwater hamster cities. But there's a 100% chance that she's going to say, OMG, can you link me to your channel?
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to either go in and say, actually, I don't want to do that just now. If we have a second date, I think that's around the time I'd be comfortable with you doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Or I have to do it. And if I do it, I'll have to link her to... ? Because I'm not linking her to Chris Chan content. Well, so maybe I'll link her to Five Nights at Freddy's. But even then, right, so at the time of this recording, it has not happened yet. At the time this goes up, I don't think it'll happen either. But I'm relaunching my main channel on, like, November 1st. It's going to be, you know, Gibby's Good Idea, Bad Idea. That's where you're going to find the hamster cities and the Yavla Balkans and stuff like that. So, like, if that channel is up and running, cool, I'll link people to that. They can look at my underwater hamster cities. They can look at my burning goats. But right now, I got nothing to point to. all I can say is I'm successful, and they'll say with what, and I'll say I don't want to tell you.
I mean, to an extent, I think that's fair. Of like, we're on this first day. Oh, what do you do? Oh, I do these things. Oh, can I see? It's like, well,
No.
you would learn a lot about me at like high speed because you could just watch all of my videos, learn everything about me, and then be like, cool. So, now I have all these other thoughts about you. And that's not a thing you can do with her.
Yeah, so
I think if you were like, oh, I'm a little uncomfortable with that because blah, blah, blah. Maybe you should be like, oh, man, I get it. It's fine.
I think, like, again, this person's a writer, so, like, hopefully they'll get it if I put it this way. But, like, I finished a manuscript recently, right? And, like, I talked about this on the date. I'm, like, on the speed date. Right, like, I finished writing a manuscript, and I gave you a copy, Eric.
You did.
And I gave our friend Christian a copy, and I gave our friend George a copy, and I gave my mom a copy, I gave a couple of our friends at the theater copies, I gave my brother a copy, and none of you have read it yet.
Correct.
And, like, I talked about it with her, and I'm like, and she's like, well, I have a workshop, and I talk about these people. I'm like, yeah, well, and I also give it to people in my life, and they don't read it. On the first date, if she's like, oh, what kind of books do you write? And I explained my book, and I'm like, it's a middle grade novel about an 11-year-old girl. It's kind of a mix. I really love Agatha Christie, and then I read a Nancy Drew book, and I hated it. So it's like, what if Nancy Drew was written by Agatha Christie? Like, that's my sort of like, that's my pitch, right? Like, that's the concept. And for her to be like, oh, do you want to email me a copy of your manuscript? I'd be like, no, we're on a first date. And I don't know you. That would be really weird.
Mm.
And so I would kind of put it in that terms and be like, obviously, I'm proud of what I did, and I'm looking for feedback, but, like, I'm not going to give my manuscript to someone who I'm having my first date with currently, and thus, I also will not be giving my YouTube link to someone who I'm talking to my first date currently. So, like, that's kind of my goal there, my method of attack for how to answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
But if we do end up going again in a month or so, and we bring our buddy Lucas with us, I won't be able to fall back on the movie theater thing until I'll have to think of, like, what else to talk about. So if we do go again, I'm going to be very concerned.
Lols.
Have nothing to talk about.
We talk about your dog and your manuscript and how it's actually in the works of getting published.
But it's not.
Well,
This one girl talked about, she's like, I started a business, I invented something, I have a patent for it. And then did not elaborate. And so I kind of feel like that's how I would look like if I talked about it. It's like, I have a book and a YouTube channel, but you can't know what they are, tee-hee.
I mean, yeah, I think that's fine, though. I think part of the thing, like, she took that approach of, like, I am being productive with my life.
Yes.
But I am in a stage with it that it's vulnerable if like, someone stole it or something, therefore, you don't get to know her now.
One of the other things I said that's, like, gonna haunt me, like, I have to repress as a memory, is this girl, like, said what she did, and it was something super complicated. And I meant to say something like, oh, I bet you get a lot of questions about, like, how that, like, what that even means. And what I should have said is, like, I bet everyone's asking you, like, I bet all your friends and your family and your parents are like, I don't even know what that is. What I ended up saying was, like, oh, I bet people don't know what that is. That's not like a normal job, like being a teacher or a nurse. And I meant it in like a oh gee, that's pretty cool, and it definitely came out as that's complicated. I don't understand. But yeah, like the patent girl very obviously didn't want to talk about it, but like you brought it up, so like that's now the only thing I want to know. But I knew that she didn't want me to ask, so I didn't.
Unless maybe that's her test, is she'll only circle yes on people that do ask her, because she wants to find someone who's assertive.
Yep. I glossed over this earlier, but it was one of our friends' birthdays, or I celebrated one of our friends' birthdays recently. I don't get to see her much anymore, but we went to the local mall, like a couple of our friends, and like we went out to dinner, went to Cheesecake Factory. I've never been there before. I got a cheesecake. It was okay. And they were like, "Oh my God, Devon, for your speed dating, we got to give you a makeover." I was like, well... So I tried on a sweater, and it was like, no, that doesn't really fit you. I'm like, I know. And I tried on pants, and I don't know anything about pants, but they're like, those look good. And I'm like, it does look good, I agree. I think they're like flat pants, flats. Is that a type of jean? Is flats a thing?
I've never heard of it.
Okay, it was something. And they're like, Devon, you need new shoes, because your shoes suck. I'm like, I like my shoes. So we go to the shoe mall, the shoe store. So this friend works in the shoe store. So like, she knows what she's doing with feet. So we go to the shoe store, and is like, oh my god, these are like so in style. And like New Balance shoes, which I don't understand.
Whack.
To me, New Balance shoes are like Kmart dad shoes. Like, what are you talking about? But apparently they're the most popular thing in right now. I'm like, whatever. So like, they're trying to get me to try on shoes, and they're like, what size are you? And I'm like, I'm size 14. And they're like, we can't find any size 14s. I'm like, I know. I have to buy all my shoes online because stores don't carry them. So in the second store we go into, they're like, hey, excuse me, man behind the desk, do you have any size 14s? And he's like, no. And you're not going to find any store in this mall that has a size 14 on stock. I'm sorry. And I'm like, yeah. But we measured my feetsies with the feetsy measurer, and it's more like I'm a 13 and a half. So it's like, okay, 13 and a half, 14, 13 and a half wide because my foot's super wide. But yeah, so I went on a little shoe adventure, and I tried to get advice from girls about what to talk about in the speed dating.
Wow.
At the Cheesecake Factory. So the night before, I had been at Applebee's with some of those same groups of people for our friend's retirement. And so I was there. So like, it's like some of the same people are at the retirement party one night, and then the birthday party the next day. At Applebee's and then Cheesecake Factory. And Eric, as you know, I drink a lot of water.
Yeah.
I'm a very hydrated person.
Okay.
Anyone out there, if you find yourself drinking a lot of water and also going to the bathroom very, very often, that can sometimes be a sign of early diabetes. So like, get yourself watched for that if you think that you're prone to potentially being diabetic. Needing to drink a lot of water and then it passing through your system very quickly is a sign of diabetes. Talk to your doctor. So I drink a lot of water because I like being hydrated. And so at Applebee's, I just kept asking for water. The waiter would come back and ask for water. And everyone was like, Devon, you're drinking so much water. And I'd be like, I like drinking water. So at Cheesecake Factory, and I sit down and I order a water, and he brings my water, and then there's 4 of us there. So he brings 2 of us our waters. Then he goes back to get the other 2 their drinks, and they got like little sodas. Before he can come back, I finish my water. And so he brings back their sodas. I'm like, can I get a refill? He says, okay. So he brings back 1. And everyone's like, Devon, you drank that water really quickly. I'm like, bro, that was only 6 ounces of liquid in this cup. I took 2 sips and I finished the water. Like, what are you talking about? So I sort of make it my goal, my plan, is that I need to finish the glass of water before the waiter comes back the next time so that he can get me another refill. So he's like, okay, you guys, do you want appetizers? We say yes, we get the appetizers. So now I finish the second glass of water. No, I finish the second glass of water before it comes back with the bread. I finish the third glass of water before it comes back with the appetizers. I finish the 4th glass of water. He asks us if we're ready to order. We say no. So I finish the 4th glass of water. He comes back for our real order. We say yes, we order. I get my 5th glass of water. He comes back with the food. I get my 6th glass of water. Halfway through the meal, he comes back to be like, hey, how is everything? You guys still eating? You want like to-go containers? I got my 8th glass of water. He comes back with a check. I got my 9th glass of water. He comes back to pick up the check, and he's like, hey, dude, you want some water to go? I say, heck yeah. He comes back, and he hands me 2 plastic cups of water with lids and straws. So I get my 10 or 11 cups of water at the Cheesecake Factory. And it becomes this thing where they're like, Devon, like, stop, like we're embarrassed. Stop drinking so much. I'm like, bro, I'm staying hydrated. I'm loving this. We got the best waiter ever. I give the waiter the biggest tip I've ever given any waiter. Love that man. But yeah, I don't know. They're like, Devon, our number 1 advice to you is if you just start a conversation by saying, hi, my name's Devon, I love Taylor Swift, they're going to think you're pandering to them. So don't do that, even though we all know it's true, don't do that. And don't drink water in front of them because you're going to look weird. And I said, okay.
Just any water?
Just like, don't drink water. Devon, you and water, weird. I'm like, okay.
Whack.
So that was my pre speed dating advice. Don't just bring up Taylor Swift to sound pandering. Don't drink water. I disagree. I think you should always drink water. Stay hydrated, fellas. And then my post dating decompression is that I said an embarrassing thing about going to the dentist, and I'm terrified about this upcoming date that I have to start. right after this episode, Eric, you're going to help me write that email. So,
Hooray!
Yay! Do you have any last words for now on this topic?
You could just ask for a pitcher of water. Or water with no ice, so you don't drink it as fast.
He came over with a pitcher at one point to start filling it and walked away. And he kept refilling my same glass of water.
Right.
So by the third time, there was no more ice left. So he was just bringing back water without ice.
You just ask for a pitcher and to keep it.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a thing. You could just
I would.
a pitcher.
I was surprised. I think at one point I made a comment like I think it would be easier for him if he just brought a pitcher, but he never did. Again, he brought one to fill it up and then walked away. Whack.
That's the word of the day. Whack.
You know what was not whack, Eric?
What's not whack, Devon?
This episode of Slapendipity, Hobos of Happy Slappy Town, episode 36, probably.
Way to go. You had one job. I gave you one rule.
That's not to state what episode number I think it is, because we're not entirely sure.
Yeah.
Well, if it isn't me not listening to that rule.
Ooh. That's last episode for October. Goodbye, everyone.
Hold on, wait.
There is no waiting.
There is waiting. They have to wait. They have to listen to us babble about Halloween, and how it's spooky. We watched Friday the 13th, and it sucked. No, oh my god, no, we didn't. I'm stupid. We watched Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and it sucked.
It was okay.
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening to episode 36. I was totally right. I looked
still
it up.
Broke the rule.
I looked it up.
You still broke the rule.
Bye.
Boo.
Boo, everyone.